And good morning.
Good morning. This is now Bridge to a Better World.
Look, I'm moving.
I'm Teresa with a frog in her throat, and this is Ani. And you're kind of, that froggy's getting after you too.
You know, there's a fall. There's a fall happening around us. It's brought sort of that damp wetness that makes us all a little froggy.
Ani Raven, and according to one do-it-yourself test, we think it's not COVID. Also, it's just not very fierce.
Come on, come on.
So,
well, we know that this is the moment that everyone's gathering together and all that kind of good stuff. So we don't really have the toys with us this morning. We just have us and a new backdrop. So instead of the toys, maybe I'll rattle on for like a minute. That usually we just show you drinky birds and things that spin.
I'll wind the cuckoo clock then.
Teresa will wind the cuckoo clock by standing on the couch. Thank you, Teresa. So I was going to rattle on about the fact that, in fact, here you are in our living room. We are in the midst of many things, and one of those things is my family is here visiting. And so this is a sort of more unusual show. And in that way of, here we are in our living room with things happening all around us. And that's kind of cool. Actually, I kind of like it.
I think that was 9 cuckoos. Anyway.
I don't know that you said that.
Slacking on the job there.
You know, I think the cuckoo was a little, the cuckoo missed some.
Well, I sympathize. I could be one cuckoo short myself.
And, hey, welcome. I'm glad your connection worked this time. Good morning. Let's go ahead and hit it.
Joy lunch?
Might as well.
Yar.
Get closer to me. Look, most of the space here, it's like our couch. So this is the show where all of the production values are actually going to be spoken out loud. And because whatever, there's the seams are showing.
Okay, again, good morning.
Welcome and good family.
Corporate media continues to report on the proposed infrastructure and relief bills without context, guaranteeing that most U.S. citizens will believe by default that the trillion-dollar totals refer to 1 year's spending rather than 10 years. Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi held a vote last night. That was what I was going to write.
In fact, it's what you wrote.
Yeah, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi did not hold a vote last night. She held it off on the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, $100 billion per year over 10 years, and continued to negotiate over the $3.5 trillion social relief bill, which would allocate $350 billion over each of 10 years to transform U.S. society from its role as the impoverished pariah of industrially developed nations. Meanwhile, Senators Manchin and Sinema held fast to the desires of their billionaire sponsors, Manchin, the senator from Exxon, standing up for coal and oil money, and Sinema protecting the obscene profits of the pharmaceutical industry. In the same period of time as the doomed green infrastructure and anti-poverty bills, the Pentagon is guaranteed $7.5 trillion tax dollars, and we're going to talk about that. Speaking of money, Stephen Donziger is a human rights lawyer who won billions of dollars in compensation for the indigenous people of Ecuador, whose lands were absolutely ruined by Chevron's insanely racist refusal to clean up their petroleum wastes. Chevron did not take it standing down and found a Chevron-connected judge corrupt enough to attack Donziger on trumped-up misdemeanor charges and to put him under an unprecedented 2-year house arrest. He's been wearing a bracelet on his ankle all this time and not allowed to leave his house. Today, Donziger goes to trial for the charges and faces a further 6 months in prison for daring to confront Chevron. Meanwhile, Donziger's representative, Jerry Nadler, who, as the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, is in a position to help Donziger, refuses to return his calls, probably because his son is in the principal law firm representing Chevron in the case.
That doesn't seem like a conflict of interest, does it?
None dare call it corruption, I guess. From Havana, Radio Havana, Cuba reports a decisive week begins today in Cuba for mass vaccination against COVID-19, a process aimed at ensuring that the entire population has at least one dose of the national immunogens by the end of September. This is how President Miguel Diaz-Canel Bermudez described it. when 8 million citizens, or 79.3%, have already received that amount of Soberana 2 injectables. The provinces of Havana, Matanzas, Cienfuegos, Ciego de Avila, and Santiago de Cuba stand out for advances in vaccination, they wrote. And skipping down on the Cuban propaganda, according to the Ministry of Public Health, thimerosal is a component that was previously used to heal wounds and is present in many of the country's vaccines. And right now they're vaccinating people without thimerosal in a batch that doesn't contain it because some people react to it. Unfortunately, thimerosal is actually a mercury compound, and it reflects just how cheap Cuba had to go under embargo, because the U.S. just doesn't allow them to have proper pharmaceutical supplies or much of anything else. And that is our headlines. But I want to add to them, actually, it just came in that InfoWars host Alex Jones, this is from Huffington Post, has lost 2 of several lawsuits filed against him by relatives of Sandy Hook victims after he routinely failed to comply with requests to produce documents related to his involvement in spreading lies about the deadly shooting. Judge Maya Guerra Gamble on Monday issued her ruling for default judgments against Jones in 2 different cases, which means that he and the conspiracy theory spewing outlet InfoWars have been found liable for all damages. The jury will now be convened to determine how much he will owe the plaintiffs. The new rulings became public Thursday, and the article goes on to say in detail just how he managed to piss off the judge so much. And in every possible way, he pissed off the judge, including refusing to produce documents, even when he had been sanctioned for refusing to produce documents.
You wonder what's going on with that. And the only thing that I have been able to fathom is that the only thing this man has is bluster. He knows he's wrong, dead to rights. He knows he's a lying sack of shit, right? So the only thing he has is bluster. So rather than actually cooperate with the law, knowing that you're done for, you're going to go out fighting the man because you have no substance. All you have is legend in the mind of your, 3.5 dozen followers. Okay, I know he's got more than that now, but in the future, maybe not so much. And so at least they can go, oh yeah, well, he wouldn't just cave. They forced it, because otherwise, what the hell? You're only adding to your time and charges.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, what goes on with that? I don't know.
Well, I think it reflects this sort of general MAGA attitude that they don't have to obey the rules anymore. And I'm sorry, what are you asking for?
Hand me my phone.
Your phone.
It's just over there.
Let me see if I can reach it.
Okay, never mind. You just
there we
keep
go.
going.
One phone coming up.
Thanks. It's going to make it easier to type back. I just realized.
Well, no, this brings me back around to what's going on politically in Washington. And the big deal is trying to pass those infrastructure and relief bills. And there's an interesting thing going on in which the Progressive Caucus is holding out. This is why Nancy didn't hold the vote, I'm pretty sure. The Progressive Caucus is holding out in the House of Representatives, and that means that they can't get it passed. And the reason they're doing this is because originally the whole deal was supposed to pass as one, and originally it was supposed to be $6 or $7 trillion. And as I was saying in the headlines, people jump at that total, but this is actually $6 or $7 trillion. Well, actually, now it's $3.5 trillion over 10 years. So that puts it back into the sort of multi-billion-dollar budget you're used to seeing if you are unlike most Americans, if you are used to looking at hundreds of billions that the U.S. generally allocates to this and that. The fact is, the budget right now for the Pentagon has got something like $700 billion. And so over the same period of time that they're allocating for these bills, that they're promoting for these bills, over 10 years, that's $7.5 trillion. And that doesn't get questioned, and it doesn't it doesn't get reactionaries like Manchin popping up and saying, oh, how in the world are we going to pay for $7.5 trillion? Well, we have various ways to pay for it.
And again,
but
that question never comes up.
Yeah.
When it's the Pentagon, it never comes up when it's corporate welfare. When money out of the budget because you're giving the massive tax breaks.
Yeah, like the 2017 Trump tax breaks.
Exactly.
There wasn't any of this.
These are not.
How are we going to pay for it?
No, because when it comes to our money, it's no issue. They need it to fund their corruption, and that's the way it goes. They're rigging the game again. And this infrastructure bill is not nearly as much as we need it to be. The people have been starved. right, for decades now, certainly since Reagan, in terms of any serious infrastructural support, any reinvestment in this country, in the schools, in the roads, in public transportation, and cutting, in mitigating the climate changes that are happening around us. We need serious investment in our infrastructure, and for a couple of corporate-owned, you know, folk, um, to be able to hold that up is really criminal. And I think it really does indict the system that we have. And to me, there's this, I question how much those two are on the outside of the mainstream, the more conservative end of the Democrats. I think that they're the mouthpieces that say, "Oh, whoops, we tried to get this across, but we just didn't have the votes, so we're going to go on."
Oh, they'll say anything because it works so well to say anything.
Right, right. So, but that's what I'm saying is how much of it is just those two, and how much of it is, this is how we play. We want to work for you, we want to do these things, but we have these couple of folks holding us up, so we're just not going to be able to. Gosh darn it, And then you have the progressive wedge, which is growing. What with the Squad and other good folks, Pramila Jayapal, and others that Rokana, that are really going out there and pushing forward on the agenda that we need so much. So I don't want to write off the Democrats, as I have so often in the past. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but I want us to actually look at this as some sort of strategy. It's not good. How do we break it? How do we break this stalemate and actually get what we need, which overall is a functional democracy, right? But how do we get what we need in terms of infrastructure, in terms of investment in healthcare, in terms of investment in things to mitigate the climate change, etc.?
Well, speaking as a socialist, as an anarcho-socialist, this is a classic problem, and it brings up to me the relation of capitalism to whiteness. These things in the United States are inseparable, and they have built themselves up together. And one of the ways that people hold on to whiteness is to hold on to the divisions and the ensuing misery that results under capitalism, and say that it's all your fault, and the system is fair, and anyone could be a capitalist, and all of these lies that they've gotten us so used to. The pull yourself up by your own bootstraps theory. I was joking the other day that Texas ought to hold bootstrap levitation contests, and so you.
That's actually, I think, a wonderful idea for street theater.
100-yard bootstrap levitation. That would be interesting.
I'm a big believer in street theater. We need spectacle.
Yeah. Well, and the way it works, it seems insidious, and I suppose that it seems subtle too, is what I really meant to say. But that's because we've gotten so used to it. I mean, we've got a system which simply denies people their human rights, and says that in order to get your basic human rights like housing, food, health care, then you've got to take whatever job is available. And of course, whatever job is available is very much compressed down into misery by the capitalist system. And then, of course, this squeezes out non-whites. And then the capitalist system can say, oh, well, it's fair, and you just failed to compete. You must be inferior, and never have to say that last part. But it's implied. It works pretty damn well. And we've all gotten used to it. And now we have the opportunity with these relief bills to start looking more like a European state, where they don't crush their people quite as hard, and they don't have masses of people living on sidewalks in tents that have tarps over them. Tents that have tarps over them because the tents are up for so long that they begin to leak through the seams. This is why they look that way. That's why they have that sort of trashy look of the tarp spread over the tent. That's, and they have garbage near them because the city refuses to pick up the garbage, because everyone's supposed to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and order, garbage to be removed from their tent on the sidewalk. I guess it's ridiculous. The city could clear up its garbage problem right now, and it wouldn't cost us all that much, and we wouldn't have to live among piles of garbage. But we have our little punishment system in place. Now this is Chalk.
This is my visiting brother, I think.
Yeah,
I think he's my brother.
this is Neo's brother.
Anyway, carry on. He just went to good morning. You were saying we were all doom and gloom, and then I got kissed by a cute little dog.
Yeah, it kind of makes things better, doesn't it?
It does. Sorry.
Well, anyway, so we've got the tactics right now are pretty clear. Manchin and Sinema. Manchin, who has been revealed, has this direct line from Exxon to his staff. That's how much he is a lackey of the coal and oil industries. And Sinema, who is so unbelievably sycophantic to billionaires that she actually went out and worked as an intern planting, I think it was trees or something, for a pharmaceutical billionaire who wanted to greenwash his efforts. Sinema standing in the way of providing pharmaceuticals at a reasonable price, because if we provide pharmaceuticals at a reasonable price, that means that we're not propping up pharmaceutical billionaires, and Sinema won't have it. So those two are standing in the way of what we could really have. And the tactic is that they intend to pass the minimum infrastructure bill, as one comedian joked, to fix up those bridges so that we can live under them.
That's Colbert.
Okay, thank you. And they want to get that through that $1.2 trillion, or actually, 12 billion over 10 years. Is it? No, that'd be 120 billion over 10 years. And just get that very minimum thing done, and then drag their feet and not pass the $3.5 trillion bill, which would be the minimum. This is the one that was reduced from the $6 trillion that we actually need, which would be the minimum to actually prop up our society and get us going so that we can have a functioning society, so that we can actually have, things that it includes, like just very basic stuff like dental care for old people, for Christ's sake.
Dental care for all.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I have so many friends. I am a person who is in serious need of dental care and cannot afford it.
It's miserable, and I don't need to tell you that people actually die from infections.
Well, I'm going to say I actually have insurance, but insurance has $1,000 cap a year. Do you know how much dental expenses are? Well, more than $1,000 a year if you actually need any work.
Most people can't just throw around thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So we go around with sore teeth, and
I go around with few teeth.
Yeah. And then we have the corporate press constantly calling Manchin and Sinema moderates. How are they moderates? They're not. They're reactionaries. They are dead set against their own constituents, to the point that Manchin has his people. They agree to be beaten into the ground. They like it. They like Manchin, but Sinema is facing a rebellion from people who elected her, thinking that she was going to be much more progressive. So there's an effort to actually remove in Arizona Sinema, who at this point is just partying with the billionaires and pretty almost openly says to hell with her constituents. She doesn't care. She likes all that money. I've got a feeling she wants to marry that pharmaceutical billionaire. I wouldn't be surprised if that comes out, but she's going to be pretty close to him.
Well, two things to add to that. Manchin also has somebody who is a very close family member. I can't remember if it's a daughter-in-law or a daughter, but has a very close family member who is involved in the board of a pharmaceutical giant. So there's ties to fossil fuel plus pharma for Manchin. What you've just said about Sinema. But again, we concur, Chalk. We concur. Chalk speaks well for all of us. So, oh, goodness gracious me. What was I saying? I know what it was. So not only do we have those issues with Manchin and Sinema, but probably directly related to that, the U.S. pays about twice as much for pharmaceutical drugs as any of the other, so-called developed nations.
Insulin is a horrible example of that.
Or is a terrific example of that, whichever way you want to look at it.
Insulin costs like 5 times as much in the U.S. And
EpiPens have skyrocketed out of control. Something that used to be pretty ubiquitous, pretty cheap. But, there's that patent stuff going on. And, insulin also really shot up. And so how is it that these drug prices can increase, exponentially all of a sudden? And Yes, absolutely. It's true. Lots of those drugs are developed publicly funded, but do we actually get a public benefit from them? No. No, they're held out of our reach. We have to pay cash. So our tax dollars go in to make them, and then the corporations profit without actually paying their fair share of taxes or giving back to the people in any way, and then charge us exorbitant amounts to actually use the drugs that we have publicly funded for the research. Fucking fantastic system, no?
Well, another thing I want to add is it's not being made clear by the corporate media at all, and I think this is pretty much deliberate at the executive level, that the great big new social relief plan, the 3.5 trillion, is largely paid for. Biden lies when he says it's entirely paid for. I don't know. It's just a reflex for them at the top, I guess, to lie about these sort of things. But it is largely paid for in terms of arrangements have been made for taxation and what have you to actually get that 3.5 trillion over 10 years into the system. So it's not a $3.5 trillion liability on our children as the conservative pundits are going on. And, reaching back to Colbert again, I think he pointed out that, or no, it wasn't Colbert. It was another comedian. Actually, just ran a Fox News segment in which they listed the various benefits that would be available to the people, and they were so tasty and they were so needed, and they actually thought that these were horrible things that people would not have to be levitating by their bootstraps to get them anymore, and actually would be able to.
Oh, they were to say these same things, that the things that we have lauded, the things that we have gone for, the things that we have begged for, the things that we have said this will help the people.
Childcare, so you can go to work.
To have somebody on Fox News use the tone of voice to say that these things are very upsetting, to say the least.
Oh my God! You get your tooth.
This will destroy society. Yeah. They're looking at having free dental, free childcare.
Well, it reveals how
they're looking at improving the roads and free college. Oh,
the horror.
It
just reveals how essential misery is to capitalism. And
because the cruelty is the point.
Yes, the cruelty is the point, and the racist cruelty is also very profitable and essential. And this is why we have, the whiteness party. You have Trump in the wings with his minority of crazed whites ready for civil war to restore that little bit of advantage that you get being white in the system. Well, I guess that's not a little bit. When I think about my own case, I think about, just how much whiteness has propped up my life. I can look not just to the fact that I was able to get jobs, but I can go back to my grandpa who got the New Deal. He was a sharecropper. This allowed him to survive and thrive. To my father, who got the GI Bill, and that came with free books, free tuition, and a stipend to help him along as he worked and went to school and got himself a degree. This gave him a tremendous leg up, and then he got the VA loans available for his house. And so he was able to flip his house when he moved from job to job in the 60s. I remember that, and just build up wealth. And these are all things that were denied to people of color. By and large, you just could not get the GI Bill. They would make one excuse or another, but if you look at the stats, they cut, especially black people, out from getting this wealth. And so now black people are blamed for the resulting lack of access to wealth, to a basis, to the fruits of their labor. And so here I am, and I'm retired from driving the municipal bus from TriMet. And even in TriMet, it was very profitable to be white, because I saw time and again things that I got away with as a white, even as a white tranny, black drivers would get busted for. And I bring up black people because whiteness in this country is very much anti-blackness. That's its first and primary effect. Other people of color are, of course, degraded and abused by it, but it is primarily anti-blackness because of the history of the United States, the way we have done things. for centuries now, since 1619.
Hmm.
That's the way it was. And so here I am, retired, got a house, everything's cool. But it was whiteness that propped me up.
Sure. There was a study I heard on OPB just in passing a couple days ago, where within the last few years there was a survey of the accumulated wealth of people in Boston, I believe it was, and the average accumulated wealth of a white person in Boston was about $238,000, like the family had access to, and for Black people it was $8, not 800, not 8,000. It was 8.
And whiteness is such a lie and such a status. I mean, I'm an Irish, a German Irish Jew Scot.
Well, we know it's
And,
whiteness is a
is just
construct.
terrorism. Yeah.
It's a social construct to actually make sure that the elite stay elite, and to keep us pitted against each other. There's all this stuff goes on, and I wanted to jump back into a couple of things you were saying, just around corporate control, around the kind of juggernaut, that we have here. So how do we actually move forward in a broad-based coalition? We know the issues of crony capitalism are the issues of crony capitalism. We know that capitalism is in its sort of flailing about stage. And we know that the game has been on for a while with white supremacy, with the corporate control of the elected rulers. How do we actually break through this? There, a kitty asked the question that what do they plan to do when we're all too poor and sick to actually work for them? What's their end game? Their end game is to break us into absolute misery, right? How do we turn this around now and say we're not playing this game? We see where it ends. I know you're a big proponent of general strikes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that non-cooperation with this corrupt system is really what we need to look at in many, many ways. But how do we form broad-based coalitions? How do we support the progressives that exist, that are trying to work within the system? And how do we try to break this impasse? It's not even an impasse so much. Well, it's an impasse in terms of getting the infrastructure bill passed, but it's more like how do we break through the old ways of doing things and see if we can actually have the sort of democracy offered by a representational government.
Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, I was actually encouraged to see that because of the pandemic and because of the necessary relief, because the billionaires almost lost their entire workforce to the pandemic, and briefly actually did lose a big part of it. They had to provide relief, and people got enough money that, I mean, it was very little money really, but the extended unemployment benefits gave people a chance to have sufficient to cover their bills, a lot of them for the first time in years, or maybe the first time ever. And now I see this phenomenon in which people are not flocking back to extremely low wage, high intensity jobs. Oh, darn, I guess they'll have to offer more money. And boy, are the conservatives furious about that.
That is an interesting thing.
It's the first, it's not an organized thing so much as a collective thing. But it's the first step, I think, in realizing that things could be much better, that life doesn't have to be such an incredible fucking grind. And, maybe a general strike, maybe the idea of a general strike isn't as offensive now as it was a couple of years ago.
And how do we take care of each other while that's happening has to be a part of the equation. We need to set up our community infrastructure, and I know many of us have, and that's important, and we need to figure out how to make it sustainable. Janet, yeah, I agree. It doesn't really work to demand anything of power. I've seen that fail over and over again. Still, I think it's worth a shot. We have to make our demands, but we also have to figure out how to make our own needs, how to get our own needs met.
Well,
and that gets back to making incredible communities and helping our own selves be resilient. It looks like skill mapping. It looks like looking at what we actually need. Can we feed ourselves? Can we clothe ourselves?
We have power when we organize. I like to repeat a story. I haven't repeated this one for a while, so I'm going to lay it on you. I was so desperate in the 80s, just before my child was born. Let's see, this would be about 87. Couldn't get work. And a pharmaceutical testing agency uh, wanted to test naproxen, which is pretty close to naproxen. And this is to be used, well, in the various ways that it's a pain reliever. And they wanted to give large doses of naproxen and see if it hurt you. And so I signed up for the study because it was free meals 3 nights a week, plus $800. And I thought, okay, well, that's better than nothing. And this is what capitalism wants you to think in terms of better than nothing. So I went out there, and we were in a dorm-like setting, pardon me. And everything was okay. The food wasn't all that great, but they treated us like crap. I mean, there were 12 of us, and they just treated us like we were some sort of prisoners, like we had done something wrong. And it was so offensive that in the cafeteria, I got together with them and I said, look, they have got to have this, this multi-million-dollar study. They're planning on getting, these major dollars from the data that we are supplying to them. So we should supply that data, but not if they're going to treat us so badly. We should all get together and say, look, we formed a little union here, a little association, if you like, and you have to start treating us with respect, or we're just going to walk. So we did that. And it was fascinating how it worked out, because we really did get their attention. We really did stop the abuse. And the owner actually came and started haranguing us. And I remember just snapping right back at him, because we knew we had him by the financial balls and we weren't going to let go. And God, he was angry. He was so mad. I think he would have thrown us all in jail or worse if he could have. At that moment, he was red-faced and stamping around and shouting, but there was nothing he could do, because we had organized and we had held up, frankly, our labor, our bodies also. Kind of a disgusting situation, but there it was. And, we thought, well, we're at it, we'll get another couple $100 as well. And we did that. So we walked with $1,000 in our dignity, which was much better than where we were at before we got together. And that's my little story about how good it is to organize sometimes.
It's true. And there is power when we work together in an official union capacity, which is fantastic. Or, when we just need to work together in solidarity in situations where less formal means work. That's important. That's a great story. It's really kind of inspiring.
Well, this is where,
and it is the power of collective action.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of notes. You were saying that this is where capitalism wants us.
Well, they want us begging. Yeah.
I am. There's a couple of things around the lack of workers, right? We hear about the worker shortages, and surely it does seem to be true, as every business I call to interact with or stop in by are all kind of short-staffed, and they say that they're short-staffed and be patient and stuff, and okay. And we've also heard a lot about the fact that people just aren't willing to work for those wages. But I also want to point out we have a lot of deaths, right? And I think that it's kind of sobering. There are the people that refuse to go back and have now had a year to sort of come up with a new plan to not work for the crushing minimum wage. And so that has definitely happened. But I also it's a little sobering to think about the millions of dead. And that actually also is a part of our worker shortage. And some people say immediately, yeah, but most of those folks were, a lot of those folks were over 70. And then, a lot of those folks were over 50, half of them. And it's just like, well, still 50-year-olds work, right? Just going to say. And in the younger age groups, disproportionately affected were frontline workers, right? Were the folks that are the service industry.
Those are grossly inhumane and brutal considerations in the first place.
Exactly.
Anyway, I mean,
yeah, that's exactly where I was going.
Well, all of those people who were, they were all someone's baby.
Right. Exactly. And so, just to look at worker shortages in a little bit different way. Also, along with that, I have noticed uh, many signs at the places that had been paying minimum wage for years that are now with the large signs help wanted $15 an hour. And 15 bucks an hour is not yet the minimum wage in this land. It's what we've been asking for. And I think it's fascinating that suddenly, Plaid Panty and Burger, what's its union fighting burger place, are now offering 15. And hmm, fascinating
How
what a
about
lack
that?
of workers does. So again, withholding your power to the extent possible is important. Using your power, I guess not withholding your power, using your power wisely, actually understanding that we all have power, and especially working collectively, we can magnify that and affect change.
Right on. And so that I feel like I've said what I have to say about those topics. Can you tell me what the tarot cards are saying these days?
I can.
And also, before you do it, I want to ask, like, when you do the tarot readings, what frame are you putting it in? Like, are you doing it specifically in terms of how the society affects our audience, or is it?
No. Let me explain
Okay.
again. That the readings I do for this sort of thing, as I look at the week ahead, it's specifically around how what the predominant energies are that we are working with at this time. What is likely to be emphasized? Where the winds are blowing. Um, it's not personal to each or any one of us, but sort of like what's the temperature of the water we're swimming in this week? Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Okay. So the frame is the same frame as the show. Then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Was that actually what you asked me in the first place? And I was like, no. Anyway,
It answered my question.
waking up. I'm waking up. It's good.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be awake.
I mentioned I'm really excited my family's here. I'm super excited my family's here. It's feeling about all I've been thinking about. So, I love my family. Okay, what we have here from the fabulous Alice in Wonderland Tarot, we have the Seven of Peppermills, the Ace of Flamingos, and the Queen of Flamingos. For you following along at home, um, what this represents is the Seven of Peppermills is an interesting card in this deck, especially it's the Griffin standing guard. And so this is a card that talks about the king of the castle, right? The king of the hill. It's so the energies, really all of these cards, the Ace of Flamingos, Seven of Peppermills, talk about reward for hard work. Talk about putting in the effort, and things should be uplifted. It's a time of knowing that you've been working hard. You are seeing satisfaction in ways, and it encourages you. So that is the overall overarching vibe. Do good work, go forth and create. The Ace of Flamingos is a very creative card, bursting forth with new ideas, new analysis. All that is going to be supported. And it's in a backdrop, it's in the milieu of grief. We are full of sorrow. Uh, it doesn't do any good to deny that. And so grieving and letting out that the sadness is timely. The seasons are changing. You can hear it in our voices. Thank you, John, for mentioning that autumnal shift. The autumnal allergies kick up, and the cold damp has settled in, and we all drop a half an octave for a week. And so it's given to a more inward focus, and knowing how hard things have been recently. That grief is palpable, but not to to experience it, to know it's there. It is surrounding us, but not letting ourselves succumb to it, because again, our work, our efforts should be supported, should be rewarded. And we have those gains that we've made should be kept. So says the King of the Hill Griffin. In this deck, the peppermills are the suit of rods or staves or wands, depending on the decks you use. And the flamingos are swords. So that's what I have.
All right, then.
By next week, we will try to figure out how to do this, possibly in 2 locations. We could be buy local by next week, as I am about to take to the road with my family.
Heading south. Long journey. So we'll see what we can do.
If not, you'll see a lot of Teresa.
Yeah.
And I'll like type comments or something. I can type furiously.
All right, then. Well, thanks for joining us. And I will see you next week. And thanks for the comments. I really like the comments.
And by all means, please do hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And like this video, share it around. Let folks know this channel exists so that we can, in fact, grow our audience. We love you, and it's always great to be with you.
Are you saying that the algorithms don't pick up socialism and social change and stuff like that and just really promote us?
That's not actually the way it works anyway. But
downvoted.
It's not actually the way. But the more upvotes and the more, yeah. Anyway, we'll explain social media and whatnots after the show. And take good care. See you.
And all the ships at sea.